this is Liz from People I Think Are Cool, a bi-weekly podcast where I interview my favorite creatives from across the globe. If you're looking for a dose of creative inspiration, then go to peopleithinkarecool.com or subscribe to People I Think Are Cool on iTunes and Stitcher.
You like film, from cult to classic, from blockbuster to B-movies. And there just isn't that one place with all the fan fervor and passion that's covering the kind of mad, diverse brilliance that you love.
Well, that's where you're wrong.
ITMODmini.com is that fan-built movie nirvana just for you, featuring the sweet, sweet writings of the wife dork herself. ITMODmini.com. Go there. Be the best you can be.
Podcast of the Alamo Drafthouse, Winchester.
Welcome to another edition of the ITMODcast podcast. Joining us is Brian Young, the Turtle Dork.
Hey, everybody.
And also joining us is Lisa Gullickson, wife dork.
I couldn't think of a quote. Props, I mayhem.
I thought you were doing a Skype
I was
Skype
doing
pause.
my impression of Brian.
Yeah, I thought you were doing a Skype pause. And also joining us is Brad Gullickson, mouth dork.
Hello!
And Billy Dass, the indie dork.
What's up, everybody?
And I'm your host, Darren Smith. Pause for dramatic effect. The disco dork. Yeah! And welcome to another edition of the ITMODcast podcast. ITMODmini, still awesome.
Yeah!
When Brian lags, it's always worth waiting for.
Is it, though?
I don't know. I was just being nice.
This episode, ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know...
Blap, blap, blap. That's a quote.
There you go. Get the strap.
If you don't know, blap, 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 get the strap.
We are coming up on the screening of Attack the Block at the Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester.
Our third still awesome film.
Yes, third film in our still awesome film series. Thank you, Andy Garrison and Alamo Drafthouse Winchester, for everything you've done and you continue to do for us, first and foremost. So right now, we're going to talk about Joe Cornish. He's the director of Attack the Block. And if you don't know, if this is your first still awesome ITMODmini episode, what we do leading up to each of these screenings is that each week we break down the movie by an actor or a performer in the film, some behind the scenes. We have an episode about some behind the scenes stuff. In this particular instance, we're talking about the direction of Attack the Block leading up to the film. So with Joe Cornish, he doesn't have necessarily an extensive film career per se as far as directing goes, but he does do he's done some work as far as screenplays for...
Well, he's done a lot of screenplays. He worked on Tintin. He worked on Ant-Man. He and Stephen Moffat and Edgar Wright have done a script for the Tintin sequel that may or may not ever happen. But he actually, early on, started out on a sketch comedy show in England called The Adam and Joe Show. And that was 1996 to 2001, I want to say. It had a cult following. And that's where he, hooked up with Edgar Wright coming out of that show. And with Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, Cornish did a lot of the special features that you see on those discs. He directed all those. Okay.
All right. So with Attack the Block, as in regards to the directing of that film, there are multiple reasons why I chose Attack the Block as far as requesting a movie to represent our still awesome film series. And one of those reasons is the directing of the film. I mean, we have an incredible cast. John Boyega, who leads the film, has gone on to star in the biggest film franchise in the world,
Pacific Rim.
And he also is in that particular franchise. I was, of course, speaking of the one in which Attack of the Clones is a part of, and so
that Phantom Menace
Phantom
sequel?
Menace, in Phantom Menace. He's in the good movies. But yeah, Joe Cornish, having a movie that deals with children, whether it be children in peril or children just being kids, I feel like the movie lives or dies on the relationship between the director and the kids. What he's able to cultivate as far as performances, to get a particular scene, emotion, or point across. Most recently, Brad, you interviewed Jonah Hill in got to talk and also see how he interacts with child actors.
Thanks for the plug, Darren.
Right. And you said that you could tell that he had a great rapport with the kids. And I think, me personally, having seen mid-90s, that comes through in those performances. You know, if you have an actor, not even just a child, but if you have an actor who is taking direction from a competent director, you know, that director is going to guide that performer to bring out the best in, you know, this particular character, the scene or whatever.
Right. It's not like Attack the Block has one good child performance or teen performance. The film is not all John Boyega's.
No.
Every kid, every teen, every adult in this movie brings it. And, you know, that has to be attributed to not 100%, but a good portion of Joe Cornish's direction and his ability to bring them all to that place.
If you have the Blu-ray with the special features, those kids are hilarious on and off camera, and they're comfortable, and that just goes to environment and workspace, and Soup's fun.
And, you know, when you're thinking about, so when you think about directing, I can't speak for the masses, but I know a lot of people's perception is someone sitting in the chair saying action, or someone holding a camera saying action. And it goes beyond that. So outside of the director directing, you know, working with the props master, working with the grips, working with the cinematographer, the DP, outside of him doing that, he has to, like I said, have a strong relationship with the actor, because in addition to managing all of these other things, he has to go even smaller and say, okay, in this particular scene, you know, Moses is feeling this way because Moses has come from this, he's gone through this, he's going through this, and this is where he lives. So he has to also not necessarily micromanage, but he has to go in and make sure he is getting what he needs from an actor.
Well, that's the key, right? You know, and actors are all different.
Right.
Some need that type of coaching. Some need no coaching.
Right.
They just need to be put to the place that they need to be. It's all about managing, to use your word, people,
right,
and departments.
And in case of the child
visuals,
and the child actors, you know, there are multiple characters. So Moses is the lead of the film, but that whole group, they're the main character, and so there are characters within this group that have interactions with one another, and not necessarily only the same character all the time. And so, in order to get those two people who aren't so, Probs and Mayhem are two characters that they're side by side for the duration of the film. But there are also scenes where they interact with the larger group, right? So you have to make sure you can get those two, Probs and Mayhem, to perform well with just each other. But then you have to also pull and make sure their personalities and their acting styles, you have to work with them and the other group at the same time if they're in a scene. And like you said, each of those kids may have a different acting style. So how you approach them, you have to manage that differently. It's just like you're a manager at Barnes & Noble. You have employees who think and act and work differently. So when you sit down and talk to Billy, you might not have the same type of...
Damn the man.
Right. When you sit down and talk to him,
kid.
your approach to how you manage what you are or not getting from him work performance-wise might different as when you sit down and work with me.
Billy gets the stick. You get the treat.
Oh,
Ooh.
damn.
I'm going to split that treat with you, Bill. Well, thank you. I view the stick as a bit of a treat, but
So,
that's TMI.
That's 90s slang.
Wow. So I mean, like, because goes to what you say. Like, John Boyega isn't the only one who gives a great performance. So yes, I do give credit to the actors who are giving these great performances, but Samuel L. Jackson. I don't think it can be argued that he's not a great actor, right? But he's had bad performances in movies. So it doesn't just rely on the actor who can give a good performance as this particular character in this movie, because he can get another script and another character that he may not be connecting with for whatever reason, and he may give a bad performance. It's on the director to say, to coax the good performance out of him and to pick the good take. So a lot does fall on the director's shoulders, and I think that he does it in spades. But outside of the acting of the film, once you move away from, performances that you get from your cast, you also have to look at the structure of the story, the set pieces, and how those set pieces play out. So the opening of the film is we establish that these kids are bad kids. They stick up Jodie Whittaker, and who plays Sam in the film. So Joe Cornish has to stay, if he wants this scene to be effective and, you know, start the movie off good, right, you know, he has to stage this scene so that, one, you establish who these kids are, you establish how they see themselves and how they view themselves in this part of the ends. You have to establish how Sam sees the kids initially, because what's going to happen is those perceptions, what we see, they're going to change. Those characters are going to have an arc. So you have to set that up. And I think the way that opening scene works with establishing the alien, and also you have to establish the alien threat. So the aliens, the relationship with the kids themselves, and also their relationship with Sam. And Joe Cornish, I think, does that perfectly.
I think. Oh, go for it.
All right. I was going to say, I think that speaks a lot to Joe Cornish's relationship with those kids. I mean, if you really think about what he's asking them to do in that moment, right? Like, act like young thugs and go out and do something where you are not the hero of this moment. Like, they are the villains of that scene, and he is asking them to portray themselves in a very unflattering light.
Well, I think what's so cool about that scene is that it's shot through the perspective of Jodie Whittaker. It's not shot through the perspective of the kids.
Right.
If we were seeing the film through their perspective at that point, it would be a very much different experience.
No, I agree.
And what the film ultimately does is it brings Jodie Whittaker's point of view over to their point of view.
I agree that it's an essential move for the way that they tell the story. My point was that he has to explain that to the crew and have them sign on and have faith that that's how he's going to work with that story and that that's how he's going to represent them. I mean,
I'll spare you the stick this time, Billy.
There's an immense amount of trust that he clearly has earned with them to put them in that spot and have them perform it so very, very well.
Yeah. Lisa, do you remember your point?
Yeah, to me, I think just a lot of the clarity of vision comes from the fact that he's also the writer. To me, I think that he's able to keep all of these, you know, shades of, it's comedy, but, you know, you really have to love these kids despite their actions, and you have to
fear for them.
And fear for them.
Absolutely.
Like, the fact that he keeps all of these story elements buoyant, I think, comes from the fact that, you know, this comes from a personal place.
Yeah.
Like, he's pulled this story about the ends out from inside of himself, and to me, I love a movie that is directed by the writer, because I think that it's just pure vision at that point. So
they have the most base and essential understanding of the material and the characters.
And you're not going through, like, you know, of course there's the interpretations of the actors and the interpretations of everybody involved with the movie, but like the fact that
the buck truly stops with Joe Cornish.
Exactly. Which I wonder how he feels about all of these other scripts that he's worked on where he might not necessarily.
I would love to talk to him about Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Oh man. That's gonna be a tough conversation.
Brian, you had a comment?
Yeah, a couple points I wanted to make going to that as far as like, well, what you were just saying, Lisa, about him being the writer and the director. I think that goes to why the film feels like it even though it's a genre film, it really is a focused film, and it's focused on these kids. And I think Joe Cornish has a handle on the story that he wants to tell. And going to your point about that opening scene and how it's told from Jodie Whittaker's point of view, is that seeing it from her point of view, we as an audience member get an idea of who these kids are. But I think that works into the favor of those characters and the story overall, because as we go through the film, we see Moses's character arc. And we can only buy into that character arc if that opening scene is effective, and it's effective because we see it from her point of view. I think there's a couple of different things that Joe, and it's really kind of hard to say because of he's only directed one film. But we've talked about like his working with the actors, working with kids and stuff like that. But going to what your point, Darren, as far as like the structure of the film, there's a particular scene in the film, and I don't want to give anything away. I don't think it's a scene that you can really give away to anybody who hasn't seen the film. But it's when they decide to go out to attack the aliens when they see them come down, and I think they're up in the tower, and then like they all come down the staircase, and you see them go into their individual apartments, and again, this is something I learned in screenwriting class, is to show, not tell. So when you do a lot of exposition, you want to give insight into the character without them explaining a lot. And just that one sequence where you see them get real excited and start to go into their apartments to grab whatever they want to grab, we're getting character development. Yeah, we're getting character development and for all of those characters in just that like 2-minute scene that ends with Moses' character going into his apartment, and then we see just in that little section, the way it was edited, the music, the way it's cut. By the time all of them come back together outside, we already are established with where these characters come from, what their home life is like, who their family members are, who they love, who they care about. And I thought that was brilliant, the way Joe Cornish was able to shoot that scene and establish all those characters in such a short amount of time.
And he doesn't waste time in humanizing them, because the opening scene is, like Billy said, they're young thugs. They're the baddest on the block. When they go down to the alien crash site and they see that the thing that came out of this pod is bigger than the one that they caught in the car, they're no longer the baddest they don't want to be on the block anymore. Big says, I want to go home, lock my door, and play FIFA. He wants to go home and be with his mom and play video games. He wants the comfort of his home. He doesn't want to be out on the block being the baddest on the block. There's something bigger out there. So almost immediately, Joe Cornish says, these kids, they think they're bad, but they're not. And they're not above saying, all right, I'm going to tuck my tail between my legs and go to safety. I want my mom. I need to text someone and let my family know I'm okay. We need help. So I feel like, excuse me, I feel like that particular choice, not drag out the badass attitude of these characters, I feel like that goes a long way into making you want to sympathize for them. Because like Lisa said in a conversation we had not too long ago in another episode, that incident that happens when they first meet Sam, they're robbing this woman at knife point. They're robbing an innocent person. They're stealing someone's hard-earned money. They're doing something bad, right? A deplorable act. And so quickly, Joe Cornish says, yes, they're kids and they're doing bad things, but they're kids.
Well, as soon as when that meteor first hits and destroys the car, like you see legit childlike wonder in their like their enthusiasm is childlike in nature. Oh
yeah. Even when they find the first alien and they're playing with it, they're like they don't understand how deep into shit they are, and that's how it is when you're younger. Ladies and gentlemen, spoiler alert.
And you know what else is interesting that I also like about this film is how, like, right now we're talking mostly about the characters in the film, but Joe Cornish does a great job of building the mythology around these aliens, these creatures. I mean, again, don't give anything away, but as far as like everything that's happening with these aliens and why they're here on Earth, he does such a great job of even just in the background of all these character developments and characterizations, he's able to kind of build this world and build this mythology that if you want, you can offshoot that into other films or build on that in the same way that people built off like the xenomorphs and aliens and or the Predator or something like that, where you can just build this history, build this mythology. I think he did such a great job of doing that with the aliens in this movie as well.
It's such a bummer that he hasn't made a film since 2011. And he's now putting out The Kid Who Would Be King, which seems to share something with Attack the Block, with the focus on childhood relationships and an outside fantasy force, Arthurian legend this time around, Rebecca Ferguson's Bat Lady, Morgana Le Fay. But, and just like with the original Attack the Block trailer, I wasn't sold then, and I'm not necessarily sold on this film coming out. I'm curious. I have my fingers crossed. I'm hoping but I'm not so sure.
Did Joe Cornish? Do you know if he wrote this film as well?
Yeah, he's the writer on it as well.
So I've seen the trailer, and I can't say I'm like busting down the door with excitement, but the fact that he wrote and directed it, and his track record as evident in Attack the Block with working with children, like you mentioned, it does deal with kids in school age kids again. So I'm hoping that the sensibilities that he was able to put into Attack the Block, I'm hoping that he can also do the same thing with The Kid Who Would Be King. But to go back to Joe Cornish and spotlighting his double duty as writer and director, so not only is he have to write a great lead or a great main cast, but Attack the Block is also peppered with wonderful secondary characters and supporting characters too. Whether we talk about Nick Frost as Ron, as we spoke about in our last ITMODmini, or you're looking at Hi-Hat, a supporting character like Hi-Hat, and I think that's introducing an antagonist outside of the main threat of the alien. I find enjoyable as well, because now you got the kids dealing with threats on both intergalactic and also familiar to them,
and
foreign and not foreign.
And he's the real danger to the block. They are in defense of it ultimately.
Right. Yeah, and so I just find that's another strong point about the film, in that you don't feel like you're not looking at your clock when John Boyega is not on the screen, or Leon James' Jerome is not on the screen. You're comfortable with being in the car with Hi-Hat while he's bumping "Get the Strap," because all the characters are so interesting.
And lastly, I would like to just point out that there are a lot of films that attempt to do what Attack the Block does, telling this narrative using creatures, science fiction genre, and on a micro budget. Attack the Block is not an expensive movie. And Cornish and his team, his cinematographer, his production designer, they sell the hell out of the creatures, but the frame that they are contained in. It's a truly beautiful looking movie.
It is. And
practical, CG, all that stuff.
Oh man, it works in tandem so well. Look, bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, whether or not you are familiar with Joe Cornish, Attack the Block is required viewing. It is an exceptional film. It is fun. It is expertly crafted, very well made, very well acted, and like Brad said, it's not a huge budget. It does so much with what little they had to work with as far as finances, because as far as talent goes, they had an impressive group of people come together to make this film. And so tickets are on sale now. October 28th, Alamo Drafthouse in Winchester. Come out and see Attack the Block.
We can also now announce our next film.
Please do.
Still Awesome, number 4.
Please do.
From 1997, we're jumping back to the 90s. Steven Soderbergh's Out of Sight, starring George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez.
And the date?
November 16th.
Ladies and gentlemen, you now know Out of Sight as our next film in our Still Awesome screening. So get your tickets. Tickets are on sale now?
No, they are not.
No.
But as of listening to this, they should be.
Yeah. Okay, so get your tickets
And
now.
you can go back in the archives and listen to our Out of Sight homework episode.
That's right. So please do. Ladies and gentlemen, you can follow the podcast at ITMODcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Brian is at Brian William Young on Twitter, and he's at the Turtle Dork on Twitter, at Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, and at Brian William Young on Facebook. Lisa Gullickson is at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter and Instagram. She is also at Baked Dork on Twitter and Instagram, and she's at Sidewalk Siren on Letterboxd. Brad Gullickson is at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untapped. Billy Das is at WB Das on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm Darren Smith, the Disco Dork, on all social medias. See, Brian, that's how you do it. Thank you all for listening.
I'm learning.
You are. You did good, buddy. That's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. And until next time.